I like David Pakman's show, and I have watched it on and off for a long time now. I first learned about it when he had on the Westboro Baptist Church, and Anonymous hacked their website in real time. And I align a lot with David's policy positions. I don't agree with a lot of what he says. He's actually gotten some things wrong that have frustrated me, but that's true for everybody, in my opinion. And you don't have to agree with me, by no means. I like David Pakman and his commentary much more than basically all of cable news. And I hope you can all recognize that David is leaps and bounds above all of these cable news people, because cable news is bad. Like right now, even Fox News is mad at Trump for pulling out of Syria. And I'm like, man, they're just all in unison with this, aren't they? But I'll tell you why. One of the main reasons I appreciate David is that he's very clearly on the left. He's very clearly at odds with, some people in like the intellectual dark web types, with conservatives, and that's great. Like it's good and healthy to have this kind of diversity of opinion. But the most important thing is that David doesn't stand for the crazy nonsense. He has a video from a couple days ago called "Racism and Sexism Exist on the Left Too." Here's an example. This example I'm going to show you is proof of why I can appreciate David and the work he does. And there's like 2 or 3 channels that I often recommend to people on the left, and David is the first. Again, I don't think he's perfect. I don't think he's the greatest person on YouTube. I just think that anybody who's willing to be on the left, combat the right, combat the center, be firm on their positions, but also call out the problems, that's a good person. I believe David is being honest. Look, he can be wrong for sure, and maybe he's been deliberately wrong in the past. I don't know. I just appreciate this kind of stuff. This story is rather serious, however, and anybody who's seemingly reasonable and tries to do right is under threat. This tweet was posted on December 17th from Amy Siskind. She said she wouldn't support white male candidates in the Democratic primary. She said, unless you slept through the midterms, women are our most successful candidate. Biggest Dem vote getters in history, Obama 08, Hillary 16. White male is not where our party is at, and is our least safe option in 2020. I don't necessarily disagree. I don't think that the Democratic candidate needs to be a white male, but I will say this rhetoric is it's going to guarantee they lose. They will. Because it's unnecessarily vitriolic to say that because you're white male, you're a bad candidate. Well, what about Beto O'Rourke, right? Well, Mr. Pakman responded, isn't there something not progressive about preemptively dismissing a candidate based on their race and gender? I feel like there's a word to describe that. As a progressive, I won't be jumping on board with that idea. I completely agree with this. And this is the thing. People try to claim that I'm conservative. I have basically like no conservative views. I agree with David 100%. Progressives shouldn't be judging people based on the color of their skin. It should be about the content of their character. Policy comes first. Like Bernie Sanders, white dude, sure. But I like Bernie more than basically all of their politicians. I'm a big fan of Rand Paul, by the way. But I think I'm a fan of his principles, and I believe he's an honest guy, but I lean more towards Bernie. And I'll put it this way. If like Bernie is here and Rand is here, I lean just a little bit towards Bernie, because I disagree with Bernie a lot too. The point is, these people calling out white men are not progressive. They are regressive. Regressive in, the way I put it is, they're reactionary leftists. The world used to be segregated. We used to be identitarian. We used to have these racial laws. We're getting rid of those things and saying you can't do this. They want to go back in time. I believe David is a true progressive who's saying, you can't do this. We have fought to change this. And I completely agree. And it's why when people ask me, I often say, I am rather progressive in a lot of ways. That's why one of the reasons I'm not a conservative. But I'm not regressive or authoritarian. I don't think, while I agree with David, Siskind's absolutely allowed to say it. Well, some other stuff happened. Siskind responded, that's your white male fragility talking. Progressive is exactly about encouraging diversity. It's about progressing. 45 of 45 presidents have been men, and 44 of 45 white. Of course, preemptive is needed to move forward. Our government should reflect its populace. No, the change should come naturally through progress. What she's talking about is a weird kind of ideological force being used against people based on their color of their skin. I recognize that racism played a huge part in this country, and I know this because miscegenation laws existed. It was actually illegal to cohabitate if you were mixed race up until in some states it was never illegal. Some states it was illegal for a little while. But the Supreme Court ruled in like 67 or something, finally ending miscegenation laws nationwide. So racism does play a huge part. But what would happen? This is what's really funny. Why she's wrong is very easily proven by what was the guy? Who was the guy in Michigan? I'm not. He was running for Senate, I believe. Jim Jones. I forget his name, but I wasn't paying too much close attention. But there was a white progressive woman and there was a black man, and the Democrats voted in the white progressive woman. Where's the talking point then? When it happens that the minority, the black man or the woman, is a conservative, they say get rid of them because they don't actually care about these things. They're lying. But it gets better because in response to what David said, which was completely reasonable and not even that bad, David tweeted this a couple days ago. He said 2 days ago, Amy Siskind posted that she won't vote for white or male candidates in 2020. I pointed out this is racist and sexist. Yesterday, she blocked me on Twitter. Today, she called Boston College demanding they not have me back as adjunct faculty. Because David sent her a tweet, she tried to get him fired from his job. This is insane. Now, I will point out one thing that's rather frustrating with David is that in his video about it, he says like, oh, the right is coming to his defense and all that stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, dude, because I don't want to say it's the right, but there are elements of the center left, and the center right, the moderate, intellectual dark web types, like Brett and Eric Weinstein, they're progressives. They're on your side and agree with your policies, but know this stuff is happening and how dangerous it is. And it seems like David is now being smacked in the face with it. He's still a little resistant to the fact that these people have gained a tremendous amount of power, with like Kirsten Gillibrand tweeting that the future is intersectional, which is a dog whistle to this far left regressive politics. I say dog whistle because I'm being a bit facetious, but no, it's literally the word, the name of their ideology. When they do things like this, saying no white men, that is intersectionality. It exists. David is now being smacked in the face by it. Melissa Chen, who is absolutely fantastic, responded saying, sorry I have to deal with this. I saw the tweet and my first instinct was to push back. I thought better of signal boosting it and engaging because she clearly isn't someone who can be reasoned with. Straight up. So Joe Rogan actually talked about this. I find it so funny. So the video I showed in the beginning, this is David's response. He's actually had a second response to this. David is getting a ton of positive support from the left, from the center, and from the right over this. There are people on the right who are gloating and mocking him, and that's a bad move. And that's what I can't stand about politics. Look, I don't watch every video he does. I have seen some videos where he's made things I disagree with, but you have to recognize that even if you disagree with his opinion and you don't trust him, the fact that he's willing to stand up to this kind of regressive behavior shows that he's an honest guy who he really does right. And I also want to point out, like, I'm not here to just do like a whack off for David Pakman, but I do think it's admirable that he's willing to stand up to these people. And I also want to point out, of all the people on the left, David is one of the most willing to have on other people to talk about ideas he disagrees with. David actually went on Jesse Lee Pearson's show too, and apparently, like the first time he did, he walked out. Like it's a really tough spot. But I've got tremendous respect for this. Here's the important point. The point of this video was not to be like David's great or anything like that. No, I really do respect him. But the point is, going after someone like David, who supports a lot of these politics, over one tweet shows that they will stop at nothing to tear apart their own, right? This is why I find myself in the position I'm in. You know, there are certain people who I won't name who are center left, who are actually relatively far left, like hardcore Bernie fans who support him 100%, who are prominent anti-SJWs. Bernie himself shouldn't have stepped into the fray in these issues, saying things like, he said white people can't be poor, that was a mistake. But what we see here with Amy Siskind is that she is targeting someone who is effectively on her side, trying to get him fired over one tweet. When the appropriate response to be like, Dave, let's have a conversation about this. It's hard to express on Twitter. It's nuanced, but understand my point. And David probably would have been like, yeah, okay. What ends up happening? My policies, my politics, squarely left. Pro-choice, social liberal positions, healthcare, education. The government has a role in these things. That's basically what social liberals believe. I'm in favor of regulation for things that need to be regulated. I don't believe in laissez-faire, free market capitalism. I don't believe in socialism. I believe in a mixed economy. I am perfectly a social liberal. Most of the things they fight for I actually agree with. I actually, we're going to get controversial. I'm not opposed to the bump stock ban, right? You have a right to bear arms, but we have to recognize, we have to be reasonable about these things. And the Supreme Court has placed restrictions upon many of the amendments in the Constitution. So none of these things are absolute. And I tend to be much more in favor of Sec 2A as opposed to most liberals because I am fairly centrist, but I tend to agree a lot more with like socially liberal positions. But these people won't have me. They don't want me. Why? Because they're insane ideology. They are too religious. That's the issue. This is a religion. The neoliberals have replaced the neocons. We used to have the religious right. Now we have the ideological neoliberal left. They want war and support it, and they want to push their ideology on people and police morality. How did it flip from right to left? I don't know, but it did. When you decide that David Pakman isn't good enough for you, you are really, really drawing a line. The way I explain it is, you have two platforms, and they're large platforms, and they hold many people. The right has disavowed some elements of the far right, and their platform shrank. But the left is pushing everyone off into the abyss, saying you are not one of us, thus erecting a new platform of the disaffected liberals who don't want neoliberal corporatist politicians like Hillary Clinton, who don't believe in war and believe in freedom, but also believe in cooperative mixed economies. I don't like that the most prominent people on the left are becoming these crazy people. And I can certainly respect David, and I take issue with them. Like, dude, all right, David's more willing to support these issues than most people, and you're going to toss him out? You're done. Plain and simple. So anyway, long story short, feel free to don't like David. I get a bunch of comments all the time for people who don't like him. Yeah, that's to be expected. But you have to absolutely recognize that while no one is perfect, I have tremendous respect from anybody on the left who is willing to criticize this insane ideology. So, whatever. I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try and put all of these into a single podcast episode that will exist on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and things like that. We'll see if it works. But that's what I'll try, and I'll just see you tomorrow on the main channel at 4 p.m.